Before 1947, Palestine was a land of deep history and growing tension. For centuries, it was home to a majority Arab population, Muslim and Christian, with a smaller, long-standing Jewish community. The land's sacred sites made it important to Jews, Christians, and Muslims worldwide. In the early 20th century, Zionism, a movement for a Jewish homeland, gained momentum, leading to increased Jewish immigration, especially from persecuted communities in Europe. This influx alarmed the Arab population, who feared for their future, homes, and right to self-government. Jewish immigrants, many Holocaust survivors, saw Palestine as their only refuge and a land promised in their sacred texts. Both groups' dreams for the same land were on a collision course. At the time, Britain controlled Palestine under the British Mandate, a system meant to prepare territories for independence. Britain had made conflicting promises to both Arabs and Jews, fueling mistrust and unrest. Tensions escalated into violence, riots, attacks, and protests from both sides. By the mid-1940s, the conflict had intensified, with armed militias forming on both sides. The British struggled to maintain control, spending resources and losing soldiers. The world watched, especially after World War II, knowing a decision about Palestine's future was urgent. The situation was unsustainable, but no one could agree on a solution. The stage was set for a historic turning point. The land waited, caught between hope and fear, as the world prepared to decide its fate. The next chapter would change the Middle East forever. This is where our story begins. The British Mandate for Palestine began in 1923, but Britain's control dated back to 1917. Britain's job was to govern and prepare Palestine for self-rule, but conflicting promises complicated everything. The 1917 Balfour Declaration supported a Jewish national home, inspiring Zionists but angering Arabs who felt betrayed after being promised independence for their support against the Ottomans. Arabs saw the declaration as Britain giving away their land, ignoring their right to self-determination. Throughout the mandate, Britain tried to balance Jewish immigration, sometimes limiting it to appease Arabs, sometimes increasing it, angering them further. Both communities grew frustrated, seeing Britain as an obstacle. Major Arab revolts and Jewish underground attacks marked the 1930s and 1940s. As Jews in Europe faced the Holocaust, desperate refugees tried to reach Palestine, often blocked by British forces. By 1947, the mandate was a pressure cooker of violence and competing national dreams. The British grip was slipping, and the world's attention turned to Palestine. After World War II, Britain was exhausted, its empire shrinking, its people weary of foreign entanglements. Keeping peace in Palestine was costly and deadly, with British soldiers caught between Arab and Jewish militias. International pressure mounted, especially from the US, which urged Britain to admit Jewish refugees, many Holocaust survivors. Britain feared a massive Arab uprising if it complied. Violence escalated, highlighted by the 1946 King David Hotel bombing by the Irgun, which shocked the world. Realizing it could not solve the conflict, Britain announced in February 1947 it would end its mandate and hand the problem to the United Nations. It was an admission of failure after decades of conflicting promises. Britain planned to withdraw by May 1948, leaving the land's fate to the international community. The world now faced the challenge Britain could not resolve. The future of Palestine would be decided on a global stage. The countdown to a new era had begun. The stakes had never been higher. The world braced for what would come next. In 1947, the newly formed United Nations faced its first major test, the future of Palestine. The UN created a special committee, UNSCOP, composed of representatives from 11 neutral countries. UNSCOP traveled to the region, meeting with Jewish leaders and visiting Holocaust survivors in European camps. The Jewish agency cooperated, making their case for a Jewish state. The Arab Higher Committee boycotted, believing the process was biased. The committee was deeply moved by the plight of Jewish refugees, strengthening the argument for a Jewish homeland. After months of investigation, UNSCOP presented two proposals: a majority plan for partition into separate Arab and Jewish states, and a minority plan for a single federal state. Jerusalem would be placed under international administration due to its religious significance. The UN now had to debate and decide. The world's hopes and fears rested on the outcome. The fate of millions hung in the balance. The committee's work set the stage for a historic vote. The world prepared for a decision that would echo for generations. The moment of truth was near. In late 1947, the UN General Assembly debated the Majority Plan, UN Resolution 181, to partition Palestine. The plan proposed two independent states, one Jewish, one Arab, with detailed borders and shared economic arrangements. The Jewish state would receive about 56% of the land, the Arab state 43%, despite Jews being a minority in population and land ownership. The borders were complex, creating patchwork territories difficult to defend. Jerusalem and Bethlehem would become an international zone, governed by the UN to protect holy sites. The plan called for economic union, shared currency, customs, and public services to encourage cooperation. It was an ambitious attempt to solve a seemingly unsolvable conflict. On November 29, 1947, the UN prepared to vote. The world watched as history hung in the balance. The decision would shape the destiny of a region and its people. The stakes could not have been higher. The outcome would change the Middle East forever. The countdown to the vote began. On November 29, 1947, the UN General Assembly voted on Resolution 181. Tensions ran high as both Arab and Jewish delegations lobbied furiously. The Jewish Agency accepted the plan, seeing it as a historic opportunity for statehood, despite reservations about borders and Jerusalem. The Arab states and Palestinian Arabs rejected it, calling it unjust and a violation of their right to self-determination. They warned that partition would lead to war, proposing instead a single democratic state for all. The final vote, 33 in favor, 13 against, 10 abstentions. The resolution passed. The US and Soviet Union both voted yes, a rare moment of agreement. All Arab and Muslim-majority countries voted no. Britain abstained. The world was split, and the decision revealed deep divisions. The vote set off a chain reaction that would reshape the Middle East. The dream of peace was already under threat. The world braced for the consequences. The UN vote sparked jubilation in Jewish communities, dancing, singing, and hope for a new beginning after centuries of persecution. The resolution gave them the legitimacy to declare a state. For Palestinian Arabs and the wider Arab world, the news was devastating. Protests, strikes, and a sense of betrayal swept the region. Arab leaders denounced the vote, vowing never to accept partition. Violence erupted immediately, with Arab militias attacking Jewish convoys and settlements, aiming to block the plan's implementation. Jewish militias, led by the Haganah, fought back, defending their communities and launching counterattacks. The fighting quickly escalated, with both sides suffering heavy losses. The British, focused on withdrawing, did little to stop the violence. As their presence faded, chaos deepened. The UN's vision of a peaceful two-state solution unraveled before it could begin. The country descended into civil war. The dream of coexistence was slipping away. The world watched as hope gave way to bloodshed. The stage was set for a much larger conflict. The fate of Palestine would be decided by war, not diplomacy. The countdown to a new era of conflict had begun. As the British Mandate ended, violence between Jewish and Arab forces reached a fever pitch. Jewish leaders, led by David Ben-Gurion, prepared to declare statehood. Arab states readied for war. The UN's plan for peaceful transition collapsed into full-scale civil war. On May 14, 1948, the last British troops left and Ben-Gurion declared the State of Israel. The US and Soviet Union quickly recognized the new state. For Arabs, it was the Nakba, catastrophe. The next day, armies from Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq invaded, aiming to destroy Israel. The 1948 Arab-Israeli War raged for 10 months. Despite initial disadvantages, Israeli forces gained ground, ultimately controlling 77% of mandatory Palestine, far more than the UN plan allotted. Around 750,000 Palestinians fled or were expelled, becoming refugees. The proposed Arab state was never created. The West Bank went to Jordan, Gaza to Egypt. The dream of Palestinian statehood was shattered. The war redrew the map and created new, lasting problems. The conflict's legacy would haunt the region for generations. The world faced a new, more complicated reality. The 1947 UN Partition Plan, though never fully realized, changed the Middle East forever. Its most direct legacy, the creation of Israel, a homeland for millions of Jews. But the plan's failure to create an Arab state left a legacy of conflict and displacement. The 1948 war created a massive Palestinian refugee crisis that remains unresolved. The borders today are not those of the Partition Plan, but the armistice lines of 1949. Jerusalem's status remains fiercely contested, a symbol of division rather than unity. The two-state solution, still discussed today, is a direct descendant of the 1947 idea. The core issues, land, borders, refugees, Jerusalem, remain at the heart of the conflict. Resolution 181 is a lesson in how international decisions can have lasting, unintended consequences. The quest for peace continues, shaped by the echoes of 1947. The story is not over.